In this series, we'll turn this into this, all inside After Effects and no third-party plugins. Let's do this. Well, hello. Tim here with Marsgohome, and welcome to part 1 of this VHS deep dive where we take some clean HD footage and turn it into some gnarly standard definition analog VHS goodness, or as the nerds would call it, video home system.
Simple, compact, nothing technical.
I'm currently working on a project that calls for emulating that weird nostalgic era of the 90s VHS look. Now, I won't go too far into my personal history and how I started making the movies, but growing up in the 80s and 90s, I swore I'd never go back. Yet, here we are like a Sunday morning hangover that continues to get worse and worse. You know, funny enough, my first camera was a Quasar, just like this one. My dad bought it at a swap meet. It was huge, weighed a ton, and it was tube-based. But that's a story for another day. So in good old Marsgohome fashion, let's deep dive this VHS look. Now before we create a new comp in After Effects and toss a bunch of effects onto our footage, we need to prep our project and footage. VHS camcorders came in all flavors, or palmcorders.
Get the Panasonic Palmcorder camcorder.
The 90s were weird. You had standard VHS, VHS-C, Super VHS, 8mm, High 8, which is a variant of the 8mm, and even Betamax. Betamax was used more in the professional fields like news media and commercial work. And they tended to have better lenses, and the Betamax tape records way better quality than VHS. VHS was cheaper, so it won the format wars amongst consumers. Anyway, look, it's been a while since I've been in college, but lucky for you, I still have some books. I paid way too much for them in college, and I need that constant reminder of poor life choices, so I keep them around. I did a refresher course, since after years, maybe some of this knowledge could be useful for this YouTube video. Let's examine a basic videotape. You can view the strip of videotape as being split up into 4 parts. 2 audio tracks, 1 video track, and 1 control track. The audio is just that, it's audio. The control track contains the information that tells the recorder or playhead how fast to spin. It has sync pulses on the tape. 30 pulses equals 1 second. Videotape is still analog, so over time it can stretch or shrink. And also the weather or temperature or the surrounding elements can mess with the physical nature of the tape. So when the control track tells the player it's off, you often see the VCR or player flash tracking or video calibration on the screen. This is what it's referring to, the playhead trying to fix the tape's issues. But let's talk about that video area, since this is why we all gathered around the campfire. Analog video records media on the 2 tracks of video, but instead of full frames, they are fields, upper field and lower field. Depending on where you are in the world, the oscillation of these fields may differ. NTSC, which is North America and Japan, is upper fields first. PAL, which is mainly Europe, is lower fields first. It has something to do with the power draw measurements, or something like that. Also, in North America, we drive on the right side of the road, so it's all weird, I guess. Don't get me started on roundabouts. Literally, I'll never find my way out. So when you see the 30 frames per second, or 60i, or the 25 frames per second at 50i, that I stands for interlace. Now let's talk about the High 8 or the 8mm tape. High 8 became popular in the mid-90s, and it was to compete with the Super VHS. And just to show the difference between resolution, standard VHS has 240 lines of resolution, whereas High 8 boosted that number up to 400 lines of resolution. If you had one of these bad boys, you were one of the cool kids. Here, with High 8, the technology changed a bit. High 8 tapes were smaller, and they ditched the control track and opted to cram all that control information into each frame on the tape. I won't go into the complete science of how this works or the issues that it caused, so we'll just move on. The way High 8 technology worked was similar to how Betamax recorded its images on the tape. It used the composite, YC component, and RGB component system. Y means luminance, or how bright the image is. And you can view this as it just being a black and white image. C stands for chroma, the color information, or RGB color. Now, since the human eye notices luminance shifting more than color shifts, the High 8 tape opted to use a huge chunk of the tape dedicated to that Y signal, and giving only a small section to the C signal. The camera separates the Y and the C signal when recording on the tape, and the playback pulls the information back together called a composite. There's actually a whole process involved. It's confusing, and for the matter of this tutorial, it's not important. I just think it's important to understand how the technology works so when we try to recreate it, we can be as authentic as possible. Off to After Effects. Choosing the right footage to convert does matter. This red footage is highly produced, good color, and good lenses. So I would focus on this footage being a Betamax style video when I convert it. It looks like it's shot from an old commercial. And even those older 80s and 90s commercials, they were shot on film and then transferred to Betamax. This iPhone footage could pass as VHS or high 8 footage. There isn't a whole lot of depth of field and it's handheld. A general rule to remember for that home video look is to use the zoom in and zoom out feature on the camera and try to avoid using wider lenses. First thing we need to do is change the frame rate of this footage. Now, we will be working in the NTSC format, just FYI. So in the project panel, let's right click on this footage and select Interpret Footage Main. Here, we need to change the footage to 29.978. Leave everything else the same, and we will hit OK. Let's drag this footage into a new comp. And we are going to name this comp footage. I like to do the housekeeping as I go. And before we get too far, let's make sure we are working in a 8-bit color space. VHS has like 0 dynamic range, so VHS was lucky to even get that. Now, if we play through our video, it's got a little bit of jitteriness. Looks like that 24 frames per second is being forced into 29. So let's fix that really quick. I created a preset here called MGH frames per second convert. I'm going to drag this on there. All it is just a time warp with a simple math expression on the speed. Here in the frames per second source, we need to enter the source frames of it. And if we remember, it was just 24 frames. In the target frames per second, we need to type in that 29.978. Now let's preview it. Good. Now it looks a lot better. Next, I want to right click on the footage comp right here, or you can do it right here, and go to the composition settings. We need to get that sweet 4:3 aspect ratio. Now this is a bit out of scope of this tutorial, but I want to go over the aspect ratio really quick, and I promise it'll have a point. 4:3 refers to the width and the height of the frame. We have 4 units by 3 units. This is how we get the numbers 4:3. 16:9 would be 16 units by 9 units, and so on. If you divide 4:3, you'll get 1.33333 and so on. You can fit 1.333 more into the frame from the left to the right edge of the frame than you can from the top to the bottom of the frame. This number is important because no matter the resolution of your footage, we can get the correct 4:3 aspect ratio. And lucky for us, After Effects can do the math for us. In the width field, you can put a slash to divide 1920 by 1.333. I always add that third number if you can't round it up. Hit tab and now you can see our footage is 1440 by 1080. Hit OK and boom, 4:3. This is still too high def for me. So let's take this footage comp and drag it into a new comp. Let's rename this to footage to 640 by 480. Open this up. Let's go to our comp settings. And let's change the dimensions of this comp to that sweet standard definition resolution. And the most popular is 640 by 480. Hit OK. As you can see, we need to scale it down. We can right click on our footage, go to transform and fit to comp. Once again, we are going to take our footage file here and we're going to drag it into another new comp. And we are going to name this composite. And this will be our render comp. I'm going to even change the color of this to, let's go green. On our footage, 1640 by 480, we can select it, go to Edit, Duplicate. We are going to right click on our bottom footage, go to Pre-Compose, and we're going to call this Y Signal. On the footage above it, we're going to do the same thing, right click, Pre-Compose, C Signal. Let's open up the Y Signal comp. We need to do a few things to this comp to reflect that luminance signal of the tape. Let's put a black and white filter on it, or a tint. Black and white has a bit more contrast, but either one should work and do the trick. Now right click on the comp and open up the comp settings. As we discovered, the tape dedicates most of the information to this Y signal, but not the entire tape. And really, this is where you can experiment, adjust to taste. But I'm going to start with changing the width of this comp to 340, just cutting the 640 in half. And as I said, we can come back to this if we needed to. And press S on the keyboard and open the scale properties. Unlink the two values and type in 50 on the X axis. Or I made a preset that I spent way too much time making for situations just like this, called the MGH Scale to Comp. Throw that puppy on it and click the Scale to Fill Comp. And this will scale the width of the comp. If it looks squished, that's correct. Now let's go back to the composite, and we need to scale the X axis up 200%, or just use this fancy preset I made. Scale to comp. And we're right back to where we started. Now let's jump into the C signal. This is just for demonstration purposes, so you don't have to do this next part. If we add a neutral gray layer under our footage and change the blend mode to color, we'll extract the Y values from the footage, leaving only the chroma information, or the color. Now we need to change the comp size. Again, let's right click on our comp and comp settings. If we think about the tape settings again, the Y luminous channel takes up about half the tape. The audio and control track takes up about 45% of the track, leaving the C chroma strip to about a third of the track. So we can divide 640 by 33, 33 being a third. Slap the scale to comp preset and check fill to comp, and we squeeze all that beautiful color information into this tiny little comp. Now let's jump back to the composite and let's stretch all these ones back out. Fill to comp. Select the C layer and change the blend mode to color. This will transfer just the color information of our luminance layer, bringing us back to where we started. Except now we get messy color bleed happening and it looks all fuzzy. Nice. Now we need to select our C and Y, and we're going to pre-compose these layers together. Call it YC and hit enter. We'll address why we did this a little bit later. Rad. In the next video, we'll dive into some color correction, some grain, some tape wobbles, and frame edges. If you found any of this helpful or useful, please consider subscribing to this here channel. And until next time, stay rad, stay cool, stay creative.
Want to skip the line and make grandma proud? An After Effects template file will be available to purchase for a killer low price. Don't want After Effects? Then try out the Sweet Premiere Pro Mogart file. Dynamically adjust the color. Handcraft your desired degradation. Take hold of the pure awesome power and control the camera date, time, and much, much more. Carefully crafted to give you, the creator, all the knobs and doohickeys so you can dial in your own unique look. Get one or get it all. Visit Marsgohome.com for more information.
Thanks, Marsgohome.